What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Mass Media Hysteria. The date is June 20th. My name is Court. I will be your host for the duration. With me, as always, is Chris.
How's it going, everyone?
Normally, Andris would be here. This is normally his week, but he's still moving, so we wish him a good move. Hopefully, he'll be back in a couple of weeks. Today, we have 4 topics that we're going to talk about. We are going to be doing, in order, we're going to talk about, today is the 46th anniversary of the release of the Steven Spielberg classic and first movie ever to get the term blockbuster, Jaws. So that's cool. It's a personal favorite. I would imagine it's one of yours as well, Chris.
Absolutely.
All right. Then we are going to do full spoilers reviews of the second episode of Loki, titled The Variant, the new Pixar film Luca. As you can see, Chris is in Porto Rosso right now, which is a fictional city, but he's there anyway.
I'm actually there. Don't worry about the weird glow around my head. I'm actually in Italy right now.
And then finally, just for fun, we're going to talk about how on the Harley Quinn animated show, DC refused to let Batman go down on Catwoman, and we're going to just have a fun little discussion about that. So before we get started, we want to just say, of course, thanks very much for watching. We hope you'll consider dropping a like on this video, giving it a share around. Of course, that just helps the video get out to more people, helps the channel grow. We appreciate that very much. If there's anything you want to talk about, jump into the comments. I read all the comments. I respond to them all the time. So don't think anything is being left unread. And of course, want to remind you that if you ever don't want to watch a 90-minute YouTube video, you can find our podcast audio only on various podcasting apps. Currently, it's on Spotify, it's on Google Podcasts, and we're trying to get it up on Apple Podcasts and a couple others like Stitcher. That's hopefully coming soon. So with all of that out of the way, let's talk about Jaws. Chris,
do it.
Do you remember your first experience watching Jaws?
I do. I remember it vividly because there's actually a picture of me. I wish I could find it. So I don't know why. I don't fully remember why, but I was apparently obsessed with dinosaurs and sharks. So,
well, you were a child. That's exactly kind of how it works.
So big, scary monsters with sharp teeth. I was really into it. And there's actually a picture. I don't know why. My mom, in her infinite wisdom, she showed me a lot of movies I probably shouldn't have seen at such young ages. But I was a young kid, like 4 or 5, and there's a picture of me in shark pajamas holding a shark toy, like wide-eyed, like terrified of this movie that I'm watching. And I remember it. It delighted me and scared the crap out of me. And has been one of my all-time favorite films ever since.
All right. Have you ever read the book?
I did years ago in high school, and I don't remember much of it other than it wasn't as good. It's one of those rare instances that I can point to of a film adaptation I believe being better than the book. Like there was like a weird like mafia subplot in it. I don't know.
Remember that. I sort of remember like Richard Dreyfuss's character has an affair with Brody's wife.
Yeah.
Something like that going on.
Yeah. If for anybody who hasn't, like a lot of people don't even realize it was based on a book. Peter Benchley, I believe is the author's name. I honestly would say you can skip that. Just watch the movie.
And leave it to Spielberg to get it right, you know?
For sure. Yeah.
I will also say, of course, like John Williams' score is like one of the most iconic scores of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Jaws is fantastic. It was one of those few films that the older that I get, it just keeps getting better and better. And I really do believe it's what I would call a perfect film. Like I know that some people say like, oh, well, the shark looks kind of fake in this. I'm like, get fucked. It looks fantastic. You build a better animatronic shark in 1975.
Right.
It's great. I mean, everything. It's like 2 hours on the dot. The movie's essentially split up into kind of 2 acts in a way, where the first hour almost is kind of all the setup on Amity Island, the shark attacks on the beaches and everything. You get to know the characters. And then the second half is just this like awesome kind of adventure action film of just 3 guys in a boat chasing this shark, like beautifully structured. And it's fantastic.
I would agree. And, I mentioned off the top that this is the movie that the term blockbuster movie was coined for, I believe, because it came out in the summer and it was just people lined up for blocks to the point where the joke was blockbuster in that they're breaking the sidewalk. Yeah, it was huge, and yeah, it's a personal favorite for me. um have you seen all the sequels?
I have, yes.
I'm so sorry.
I know. Have you seen them all?
Yep.
Okay, yeah, it's I obviously, like, it's hard to make a good movie sequel, especially when it's one of the best films ever made. It's hard to follow that up, but it's surprising that how just low it sunk. Like, I actually rewatched the second one last year just for because I haven't seen it in ages.
Okay.
And it's not a terrible movie. It's just very subpar on every level. And then the third one, and then of course the fourth one. The fourth one is probably one of the worst studio films that I've ever seen. And I do want to say studio films because I've seen some like trash that they've talked about on Red Letter Media that was made for like, $5 in
Right.
someone's backyard. But yeah, Jaws 4: The Revenge is just god awful.
It's like, yeah, I remember thinking the second one, I like they're I rank them in the order of release. Like the second one's like okay, the third one's pretty lame, the fourth one is like hilariously bad. Michael Caine's in it, but like just none of it makes sense because I forget the wife's name, but like the whole family has been murdered by sharks, which is terribly believable. So she decides, you know what, I'm getting out of Amity. I'm done with sharks. I'm going to move to the Bahamas, which of course are islands in the ocean. And some giant shark has a vendetta against her family, beats her there despite the fact that she took a plane. And then my favorite moment,
they're fast swimmers, okay?
I guess,
There's
yeah.
been millions of years of evolutions. It's facts that they can swim faster than a plane can fly.
And then the climax of the movie is like my favorite thing ever. The shark is like jumping out of the water. We think Michael Caine is dead, and there's like a broken mast on the front of the ship that's all like jagged and whatever, and she's gonna ram the shark with it. And there's this one brilliant shot. I use the word brilliant very loosely. There's this one brilliant shot where the shark leaps out of the water and goes roar, because apparently sharks have vocal cords and can roar. They don't. It's fucking hilarious. But
yeah,
man, that first movie, I have very few problems with that film. Strangely, one of the only things I don't like about it is parts of the score. There are certain parts where, like,
blasphemous.
I know,
blasphemous.
I mean, I love the main theme, obviously. Who doesn't? But there are moments where, like, the shit that's going on is like pretty heavy, and the music's really kind of jolly and happy, and it just like doesn't fit. But like, that's about it. It's such a good movie.
It is, yeah. It's interesting because obviously you were talking about how this started the blockbuster kind of trend, and movies were still huge money makers prior to that, but movies they stayed in theaters longer and they kind of recouped their money and their budget over time. Jaws, like you mentioned, the reason why it was such a big deal is because it really started the trend of everybody needs to go and see this at once. We have like box office weekend metrics now about like who has the biggest box office for the weekend, because Jaws really set the precedence of like, you need to see this as soon as possible. Don't wait a couple weeks, see it now. And it's interesting to me because obviously it's been 46 years since it came out, but it simultaneously is like the archetype for the blockbuster mold, where everything, the way things were paced, where like you introduce the characters and you introduce the plot, and then it just builds to this like climax and this explosive kind of conclusion.
Literally
Explosive conclusion. But at the same time, it's sad to see how far away as well blockbusters have come from it, because Jaws is not just nonstop action. It's not nonstop sharks killing people. It's really about the characters, and that's really what helps sells it, is that you love the characters by Quint and Ford, and what's Richard Dreyfuss's character's name?
Matt Hooper.
Yes, I've seen this movie a million times and I still kind of mix up the names. you love those characters, and it's their interactions that stick with you. And for every, exciting, thrilling moment with the shark, there's a even more memorable moment of just them interacting. Like one of my favorite scenes of all time, of course, is the Indianapolis speech
I was
or
just gonna
monologue
say
that Quint says.
that's so good.
Yeah. For anybody who's seen it, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He's kind of loosely telling a real event that happened in history, but just the way that it was written, delivered, just the pacing of it. It's that kind of like stopping in letting a character have a moment that I
Mhm.
feel is lost with a lot of kind of modern day blockbusters. Do you agree with that, or do you know where I'm coming from with
I
that?
mean, I feel like, you know, I guess Marvel are some of the biggest blockbuster movies right now, and
Mhm.
particularly in the last couple big ones, they didn't have a lot of time for character moments because there were
Yeah.
so many characters.
Yeah.
Um, I think I don't want to say that like movies don't have that anymore, but I
Mhm.
do think a lot of times big blockbusters do sort of pay more attention to spectacle
Mhm.
over quiet character moments. And like you said, like I believe the actor's name is Robert Shaw. When he's telling that story, like it's just so haunting. Like
Mhm.
just the eyes roll over white, and like it's
Like a
and then they're
doll's eye.
yeah, like a doll's eye,
Like
and
a
then
doll's
they're
eye.
singing the "Show Me the Way to Go Home" song, and
It's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah. No, you're right. And it's not to say that like I'm not like just kind of poo-pooing on every modern film by any means. It's just sort of I'd say the general trend of big studio tentpole films. Like I don't know, they don't really hold the same kind of classic qualities to me. And this is coming from someone that I really, really enjoy the Marvel movies. Like not just like I see them multiple times in theaters, so I'm a fanboy when it comes to Marvel. But yeah, even then, none of them really kind of hit me the same way, or I think have nearly as memorable moments as Jaws did, which
right.
is maybe not a fair comparison. Like I said, I really do believe that Jaws is one of the best, certainly one of the best American films ever made. And so it's kind of unfair to compare, something to such a classic film
Right.
of legendary status, but whatever.
And I guess before we move on, I should say, Ben, dude, you're 40. It's time to fucking see Jaws already. Come on
And
now.
come on, Ben. I don't even know you, man, but you got to check out Jaws.
What's wrong with you?
Come on, Ben.
For the love of goat. Okay, so we're going to move on. We're going to talk about the second episode of Loki, titled The Variant. Of course, it's out on Disney Plus right now. Chris, you and I really enjoyed the first episode of Loki.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel overall about the second?
Well, to prove that I am not just kind of shitting all over modern stuff and spectacle, I kind of loved the second episode. I really, really liked this. I thought it was uh better than the first episode because the
Okay.
first one, which I really liked, the first one felt at times like it was kind of just setting up. It felt like the preamble, which was needed. It was absolutely needed for this show. But the second one really delivered, I think, on the promise of the show of what this could be. And I'm all on board. I thought it was great.
Okay. And I should say, like I said, this is going to be a spoilers review, but if you want to see non-spoiler review, that's up on my channel. I'll put the little thing up there. So for me, I would say I didn't enjoy this one as much as the first one. I still quite liked it.
Interesting.
Um, a couple reasons for that are one, I found the first half of the episode to be kind of slow.
Mhm.
And two, it didn't this one felt more like a police procedural, whereas the first one had more. I guess one thing that I was missing in this episode, which was my favorite moment in the first one, was when Loki was watching the footage of his life and he goes through that like big range of emotions. We talked last week about how we were saying that was some of the best work Tom Hiddleston has done in the MCU in that scene.
Mhm. Mhm.
I didn't get any of that in this episode, and I really kind of wanted more of that.
Mhm.
However, I found the episode quite funny. The banter between Loki and Mobius, particularly when Loki is using Mobius's salad as the analogy, that was hilarious. Like, and I thought Owen Wilson killed it in that scene. Like, he didn't overplay it. It was beautiful.
Mhm.
Um, Again, I really like the way the show is shot. There's
Mhm.
one specific shot that I'm sure we'll talk about, but really liked that. Um, really enjoyed the sequence where they went to Pompeii.
Mhm.
That was fantastic. Did look a little bit green screen to me, but I didn't
Yeah.
care. It was such a cool idea.
Mhm.
Just watching the pyroclastic flow come and all that, I loved it. Um, the one shot I wanted to mention, and I'm sure you got this too. Well, caught it. It's very obvious. But when we're going into the sort of TVA's library, there's that
Mhm.
one shot of the elevators coming down with that like crazy architecture.
Oh yeah.
I
Mhm.
thought that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, again, we mentioned it yesterday or last week, but the art direction in the show is really top notch.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. It's such a great mixture of kind of like futuristic sci-fi elements, but also like we mentioned a lot of anachronistic things. It feels like Mad Men meets Doctor Who meets Terry Gilliam's Brazil of just kind of like this weird futuristic thing with a lot of anachronisms that's just about this bureaucratic kind of entity. And it is very bureaucratic. Again, I got a lot more Brazil vibes. Again, just because of how much like red tape there is for every single thing. It's like, can I get these files? No, you can't get those files. You have to do this, 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 that. It's like there's so much like I really like that that world building, and that's kind of what's really drawing me into the show faster than the two other Marvel shows. Is that I think it hit its premise, hit the ground running with its premise faster than WandaVision or Falcon and Winter Soldier.
Good.
And the world building is just already, I'm just more interested in it than whatever was going on with like the terrorists or whatever in Falcon and Winter Soldier. That could just be a personal taste, you know. But yeah, cinematography is great. It's a really beautiful looking show.
Yeah.
The performances are terrific. I saw someone on, if anybody on my Instagram is listening to this, I apologize, but I saw someone complaining about the acting, and I don't see it. I think they're great. I mean, like you mentioned, nobody's really doing the same sort of dramatic heavy lifting that Hiddleston had to do last week, but the banter between Tom Hiddleston and Owen Wilson is fantastic.
Yeah.
Owen Wilson's character this episode, we get a little bit more insight into him. And he's the in the first episode he seemed much more jolly, for lack of a better term. Maybe not jolly, but he seemed much more like, I'm gonna help Loki, and I'm a good guy. And this, he still seems like a good guy, but there are little things that he mentions that he's just kind of like, I just want to get this done.
Right.
I just want to catch this guy. I honestly don't really care what happens to this other Loki, or so he says. I think that they're gonna be closer by the end of it. Yeah, but no, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I think these two guys have wicked chemistry together, and I did, particularly in this episode, I did kind of, they're so like they're struggling just to tolerate each other, but I did feel like there is some kind of like a bit of a genuine affection for between the two of them.
Yeah,
Like, I think they are gonna kind of have a budding friendship, which I think is great.
yeah,
Also, I also just love uh just just the fun they're having with Loki's name because they're going after other Lokis. So it's just at one point he's saying like, there's only one way to catch a Loki. It's just like
yeah.
it's so silly, but I love it.
Yeah, it definitely has a bit of a like some goofy humor throughout, but
Yeah,
I like it. I don't know if goofy is the word, but kind of like a quirky, again, something that really only would work with this weird high concept sci-fi fantasy show.
right.
Um, yeah. Oh, I was gonna say that I don't know. I agree that like it didn't have as emotional of a moment as the first episode. I think that I didn't mind that though, because I think that it's sort of like if every episode kind of had like that gut punch, I feel like it could possibly be contrived or feel contrived. So I think that it's like kind of having the ebbs and flows of like, okay, we got the emotional weight out of the way so that Loki has motivation to do this. And then this one felt again like you mentioned, kind of like a police procedural. Just like, and I liked seeing that. That's kind of what I was interested in, and I could see this premise being like, you remember shows in like the 90s where like, let's say Star Trek The Next Generation, or even like the revival of Doctor Who, where episodes were very serialized, where each episode you could just pop it in. It wasn't like necessarily one long continuous story. It was sort of like, all right, this episode they go to this planet, this episode they go here.
Right.
Loki, it still feels episodic like the other Marvel shows, but that premise in this episode, it's like, oh, I could see this as being like like, and another, if this was made a couple decades ago, this premise would just be about like Loki and Mobius, just each episode going to a different time period. Like, oh, now we have to solve a mystery in Victorian London. Now we have to go to wherever.
Yeah, almost like an X-Files or something.
Exactly. Yeah. Or like a quantum leap, I guess.
Right.
Yeah, which I dug. I liked them going to the Renaissance Fair and kind of doing some detective stuff. And like you mentioned, the Pompeii sequence was really fun and kind of charming. Yeah, you could tell that like the set only extended so far, and then from that point on, it was green screen, but it was fun. Yeah, no,
I thought that scene was just so cool that I was like, that's a green screen. I don't care.
Yeah, it's fine, because a lot of the other special effects looked really terrific. So like I didn't have any qualms against it. Like, a lot of the interiors within the TVA, there's a lot of like wide shots, especially in the library. You kind of have like backgrounds. You could tell that it's like, okay, he's on a green screen, but it still looks quite good, I think.
I did appreciate, and I mean, maybe it's coincidental, I don't think so, but there's that one shot where Loki's doing some reading or something, and you can see, a lot of the library in the background. They're like signs for different areas, and there's one over his shoulder, and the sign reads LOK3, which just looks like Loki. I thought that was funny. Stood out pretty hard to me, but I appreciated that. What did you think of the big reveal at the end?
Oh, I saw it. I kind of saw it coming, just because I've seen the trailers and everything, and I think we talked about it last week that there was a woman cast. I had the actress's name. Let me pull that up. So I knew that there was going to be a female character, and I kind of guessed that it was going to be like a female version of Loki, especially because earlier in this episode, they're kind of doing like they're going through like kind of holograms of different Lokis, and like, one looks like a troll, one looks like he won the Tour de France or some shit. So I was like, okay, I feel like we're gonna see weird variations of Loki. It's not just gonna be Tom Hiddleston. It could be a weird ogre monster, or he could be a normal looking lady. So the actress's name is Sophia Di Martino. I don't think I have seen her in anything yet. She didn't really have much to do in this episode, but I can imagine she's going to be a big player going forward. So I liked it. Even though I wasn't like shocked, I liked the reveal. I liked that they're going in that direction of like, it's not just another Tom Hiddleston. Like, it's the same character, but from a wildly different timeline, and that's fascinating to me. I think it's really interesting.
I really enjoyed the whole sequence inside the like department store towards the end. I got very strong like The Mist vibes from it.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's hard not to when you're in a supermarket like that. Yeah,
and there's crazy storm, whether or not there are monsters, but
and Thomas Jane was just like around the corner. It was weird.
Right. Yeah. I quite liked that whole sequence when it first started, where the variant, as it were, is sort of jumping from different character to different character. At first I was like a little bit lost, and then I picked it up. I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on, because I kind of forgot what Loki's powers were. But I did quite like that. And I enjoyed the line where, because the variant goes into the employee who's like stocking shelves, and then and then she switches to another guy, and Loki's like, oh, I missed Scott, or whatever his name was.
Because Scott was like this nebbish kind of like scrawny dude, and then he jumps into like this big burly dude that's just throwing Loki around.
Yep.
So go ahead. I was gonna say, I have a couple things, and I have a question for you, because I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. It's a little bit of speculation, but couple things was one is speaking. You mentioned up top that you thought this was a little slower.
Mhm.
Did you notice this? Because I agree, but there was a lot of kind of weird lingering shots that didn't seem to add to anything. Like there was a shot where the woman, the kind of the strong like woman from the TVA that's like does not trust Loki at all, and she was the
Right.
first one to get possessed. Well, she wakes up after being possessed by Lady Loki, and the camera like slowly pushes in, and she's looking around, and it keeps pushing in, and it's like a solid like 10 seconds, and then it just cuts, and it's like, what was that? Like, what is? And that was it. If it was just a one and done, I don't think I would have noticed. But there was a lot of stuff throughout where it just seemed like we're lingering. Like, why are you? You can cut it here. Like, I don't know. Did you pick up on any of those?
I didn't notice that at all.
Okay, all
Maybe
right.
we should give the
It's
episode another
just
watch.
a minor nitpick that didn't really add much to it. But I was gonna say that one of my favorite things of this episode was this conversation that Loki and Mobius were having in the I think it was in like the cafeteria, but it got into like this philosophical territory that I was really interested in about beliefs in the nature of beliefs, where Loki was talking about like, you don't really believe in like these three lizards that are just, from outer space. Do you understand how ridiculous that sounds? And Mobius is just like, "Oh, you're a god from Asgard. This, that." I don't know. I really dug that conversation.
Yeah, me
Were
too.
you into it too? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I liked how Mobius was just kind of saying, like, it's not even necessarily that he believes in all this stuff. This is just his job, and this is what he
Uh,
sees, and he's just. I thought it was an interesting, kind of philosophical, almost like religious conversation, but
uh,
in a very different context, which
mhm.
I thought was fun because like Marvel doesn't often sort of go there,
No.
even though like so many so many of their characters are godlike or are literally gods.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really liked that scene.
Mhm.
I also really dug when they sort of make the gentleman's bet to see who can figure the thing out first, and they're both like there and they're just working away. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, I thought that was really fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Their banter and their camaraderie, or just them working together is so far been, one of my favorite aspects of the show. It seems like maybe at least for the next episode they're going to be separated a bit, because it's like, at the end, Lady Loki f's off into a little portal, and then Loki follows her, and Owen Wilson is just a hair short. So I'm curious. I think we talked a lot, especially during Falcon Winter Soldier, about whether or not we felt interested in the next episode, or like, does this hook you? So Loki's 2 for 2 as far as hooking me with the next episode, where I'm like, I really want to know what happens with these characters. I really want to know where the hell they went. What's the plan? And that's part of the thing I was going to ask you, is like, what do you, I know that we've been burned by speculations
Mhm.
with WandaVision, but do you have any kind of ideas of like what's really happening? Like, what is Lady Loki up to, or anything like that?
I have, we talked about this in WandaVision. We talked about it in Falcon and Winter Soldier. We both did not heed our own advice each time. We were just like, we're done with speculation. We're just not doing
Mm.
it.
Okay.
This time, I've not done it. I've managed to not do it.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just because I'm really enjoying the show, and because I really liked the way the last episode ended. Like you said, I'm
Mhm.
absolutely hooked on episode 3.
Yeah.
I'm just not letting the thoughts come into my head. I'm pushing them away.
Mhm.
I just want to let this show kind of wash over me. And yeah, I'm really psyched for next week's episode. And it's crazy to think that after next week's episode, we're halfway down the series.
Yeah, I kind of dig the kind of shorter, like shorter, not shorter episodes, but like shorter seasons. I mean, because sometimes we've seen it before, even with like the Netflix, Daredevil, and those shows, like the Defender shows. Sometimes like it's like, this didn't need to be 13 episodes long. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like you really could have trimmed it down. So 6 episodes where it's kind of like a 4 hour long movie. I'm down. That's cool.
And you can tell they put a lot of money into this show because,
Oh, for
like you
sure.
said, it
Yeah.
looks great.
Yeah, yeah. So going back about the speculation, I agree. I'm trying not to speculate on a lot of stuff. However, I do have just like this feeling, like I wasn't even trying to, but I have this feeling when in regards to the timekeepers. I think
Okay.
that where I just get the way that people are talking about it. I don't have like any kind of specific theories or like things that I'm expecting, other than I think they're full of shit. I don't know how to explain it other than like I feel like there's going to be a Wizard of Oz type moment because they just keep talking them up like, oh, the timekeepers, they're great, they know all. And Gugu Mbatha Raw's character is just like, yeah, they're great, this is what they say. Loki keeps wanting to meet him. Owen Wilson's character says he hasn't met them. So it really feels like it's setting up for some sort of bait and switch. Like I said, I don't know if like they could be real, they could be not be real. They could be dead for a while. I don't know. I'm not going to go into that kind of speculation, but I think that I feel confident that everything is not as it seems in regards to them. Does that seem? Were you kind of picking up on that?
That's interesting. Actually, as you were talking, it was sort of making me think of you've seen Snowpiercer, the movie, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So it kind of was making me think of like I think his name is Wilford, Ed Harris's character.
Yeah.
It's just sort of this like mythical character that eventually we find out he does exist, but I think maybe there's a question of that or something.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a kind of talked up character to sort of keep people in line, and that's an interesting thought. That's like,
yeah,
like maybe it's just someone at the TVA using these, like you said, like the Wizard of Oz as this sort of these mythical beings to sort of keep people in their back pocket somehow.
Yeah, it just seems like even though I'm like I said, I'm not going to try and think about what the reveal would be. It seems as though I can't imagine that they would be everything that everyone has talked up so far. Like there's going to be something because, like you said, Ed Helms' character in Snowpiercer, he did exist and he was at the head of the train and he did control it, but there was still a bit of a letdown. He wasn't quite the legendary mythical figure that he was kind of built up to be.
He was kind of a little old man.
Exactly. So maybe the timekeepers are just 3 Ed Helms.
And I should say
that would make you happy.
If you mean Ed Harris's, yes.
Well, did I say Ed Helms? I kept saying Ed Helms. Yeah. That would not make me happy. No offense to Ed Helms, but if it was just 3.
I like Ed Helms too, but
now I'm just picturing 3 Ed Helms. Like, ugh. I'm like, oh God, no. Okay.
But you know what?
Ed Harris.
There would. It's actually like to your point with this idea that you have. I feel like, in a way, Loki and Mobius's conversation, about the philosophical conversation, kind of works into that theory because Loki's straight up questioning if they're real, and Mobius is saying, I don't care, this is my job. I think that would actually set that up really well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've been burned before, so I'm not going to be fully surprised. I just think it would be a bit of just the fact that Owen Wilson's character said like, oh, I've never met him. And then if we do meet him and they're literally everything that everyone has said, then it's sort of like, why was there sort of some kind of mystery around it if it was just they're exactly what everyone said? Anyway, just a thought.
I like it. All right, shall we move on? Or is there anything else specific you want to talk about?
No, I think that covers it. Second episode, really good. Stoked for the rest of the series. Let's do this.
All right. So we're going to move on to the new Pixar film, Luca. This came out on Disney Plus on Friday. Again, this will be a spoilers review, but I do have a spoiler-free review up on my channel. We'll do the thing. And if you want to skip this, I'll put a time code up on the screen. Remind me in editing court. You can just jump forward to our final topic. So Luca is, I believe, the first Pixar movie of 2021, maybe the only one. The 2 most recent being Onward and Soul. I enjoyed both of those movies. I think I liked Onward better than Soul personally, but
oh really?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Onward really got me, particularly in the end. I really like that movie. But so Luca is, well, before we get into the story, let me ask you, you're a Pixar fan.
Yeah.
What were your sort of overall impressions of Luca?
I thought it was good. I I enjoyed it. It's certainly not great, and it's certainly not kind of top tier Pixar for me. It felt a little light on just like everything. It didn't feel like it had this, it didn't feel as imaginative as some of Pixar's best. It didn't kind of reach the same sort of emotional depths as other Pixar movies. It didn't reach the same sort of like philosophical or theological depth. Like, I know that you said that you liked Onward more, but I was still struck with their most recent film, Soul, and just how existential that movie got.
Yeah.
Like, it really went for it with these heady themes. Luca didn't really have any of that, and it's not bad by any means. Like I said, I think it's still good. It's still quite good. Um, it just feels kind of like it doesn't feel like it could be that memorable to me. Like it's in if in I there's so many Pixar movies that I'll never forget, and like no matter how long it's been since I've rewatched them, and they just stick with you. The themes, the ideas, moments, characters, and then this one, I feel like I I'm just gonna not really remember it in like a few weeks' time.
Kind of right there with you. I liked the movie. I thought it was cute. It was fun. I
Mhm.
feel like it was made for younger kids than a lot of Pixar movies because it the sort of themes and everything, it felt very just kind of surface. It
Mhm.
didn't feel as deep as a lot of Pixar movies. And for me, it's like it it didn't make me laugh the way the Toy Story movies do. It didn't make me weep the way like Up did.
Oh yeah.
The beginning of Up, that kills me every time.
Mhm.
I found myself, I didn't I didn't fully connect to this movie. I had fun with it, but nope. I kind of noticed myself going like, "Oh, that's cute," or "Oh, that's sad," but I wasn't actually getting sad, or
Mhm.
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, there wasn't much to it. Even though I messaged you, and I won't get into this off the top, but like I'll kind of mention it before we're done with it. But I do think that there is a fair amount of subtext in this film. The the director has come out and kind of like squash like, well, I didn't intentionally try to put any like, gay themes or gay subtext in the film, but I don't know. I think that there it is it I think it's pretty, there's something that happens at the end in particular that um I think it was like pretty apparent. Like, I don't know how someone could have animated that for months and not realized what it implicated. But like I said, I'll get into that later. Yeah, no, it's yeah, but I agree with pretty much everything you said, that it's just it's not as funny as as other Pixar movies. I kept thinking about Ratatouille a lot,
Okay.
in the sense that Ratatouille was, it's set in Paris, so it's kind of like this is an Italian set Pixar movie. Um, Ratatouille is a French set Pixar movie, but it had a more interesting premise, like this premise of a rat that everybody hates rats and stuff, but he loves to cook and he hides under a chef's hat and so he can cook. That's like, I've not seen shit like that before. That's really cool, and it's really interesting and inventive. Um, Luca though is just kind of like, oh, they're kind of like sea creatures, and even though I haven't quite seen these specific types of sea monsters, I suppose it still kind of feels like, well, I've seen movies about like mermaids or other aquatic humanoid creatures coming up.
Merman,
Merman.
Merman.
Exactly. Zoolander especially. Like it just felt too familiar, and it didn't feel that inventive. And a big part of the plot was these two characters, well, three characters necessarily, trying to win like a bicycle race.
Mhm.
It just felt very low stakes, and it just didn't feel that imaginative to me.
Well, and that was one thing. I mean, like I had fun with the marathon thing, but like they're doing it to get a Vespa so they can drive around Italy. Like I don't know. It just it it felt kind of like just that was a plot device just to get them to this race so they could do it,
Yeah.
and they all have to work together. And I don't know. I did sort of, I dug the sort of friendship between these three characters.
Mhm.
Um, I think the actress's name was Emma Berman, who voiced Julia. I really liked her. I thought just a wonderful enthusiasm to that role. I really liked Jack Dylan Grazer as Alberto, and what's his name?
Oh, Jacob Tremblay.
Jacob Tremblay. That kid always impresses me. I said in the spoiler-free review, like, he did a great job of really expressing like the wide-eyed wonder just through his voice. I thought that was really good. I thought the movie looked great. I thought it was really colorful.
Yeah, that's what the biggest thing that I could say about this. The biggest positive is its visuals. Pixar's never, shorted us on visuals, but yeah, that's the best thing about this, is that it just looks beautiful. It's the movie. I mean, we didn't really even get to the plot, so I'll just like on a very quick summary of it. Essentially, is there's a character by the name of Luca, played by Jacob Tremblay, who's a little sea monster living underwater in the Italian Riviera, and he meets this other sea monster named Alberto, and he kind of encourages him to go above the surface, where they can transform into look like humans instead of scaly fish monsters, and just kind of experience life as a human, running and breathing air. And they go to this little Italian town on the coast, and everything, the first like 20 minutes I was kind of like, because it spent most of its time underwater, and that felt a little half-baked to me. It seemed like the filmmakers weren't nearly as interested in creating like an underwater world. It was kind of like, they're sea monsters. They heard fish that make sheep noises for some reason. They have jellyfish for lamps. The end. That's it. But as soon as they get to the town, it's like, oh my God, it's stunning. It looks absolutely beautiful. The attention to detail. Even though the animation style is still very cartoonish, the textures on everything was insane. Like the texture on the skin and the clothes and the hair. It's beautiful.
Yeah, there was a moment that really stood out to me, where we see Julia. I think it's very soon after we meet the character, and there's a close-up on her. And again, like you said, like, she's not made to look photorealistic by any stretch of the imagination, but her hair and the fabric on her shirt looked absolutely photorealistic.
Yeah, I don't even understand it. Like she has like this blue knit cap that she wears, and it's like animators just had to like digitally stitch this together, and it looks fuzzy, like it looks real, which is weird because the characters don't look real. But like you said, like the textures and everything are pretty much friggin' photorealistic at this point. It's wild.
And I wanted to mention, because you were talking about like the underwater parts of the movie. So Luca's parents are played by Maya Rudolph and Jim Gaffigan, and like, I thought they were absolutely wasted in the movie. Like, neither of them are particularly funny. I'm not a huge Jim Gaffigan fan. Yeah. I don't dislike him, but his brand of humor is just not my brand of humor, whatever. I love Maya Rudolph. But like, not only were they not given much of a chance to be terribly funny, I thought those two characters were an absolute afterthought. Like, they were there to say, you have to go into the deep with your uncle, and then they go look for him, and then it's over.
Yeah, I agree. They, which is weird because Pixar is usually really good, especially with like, family, where they the family characters in other Pixar films, they really emphasize kind of that bond and that connection and kind of the struggles that can arise between family. And yeah, this felt like an afterthought. Like they just felt like they needed to have them in there narratively to add a bit of tension, because otherwise, Luca is with Alberto and he's on land for most of the time, and they're preparing for this race. Okay, well, there's not that much stakes at this point. So what can we do to raise the stakes? Oh, well, Luca's parents, who don't want him to come to the surface, they come to the surface and they're looking for him in the town as well. So it felt kind of contrived, and they didn't feel like real characters. They didn't really feel like, and at the very end, it was just kind of like, we don't, throughout the movie, it's like, we don't want you to come to the surface. We don't want you to come to the surface. And at the end, they're like, you won the race. Okay, good job. We're happy now.
Now go to school.
Yeah, like what?
Yeah.
Yeah, they felt kind of wasted. I agree.
I did get a little kick out of so Luca's grandmother.
Mhm.
She's got a couple of funny lines that made me
Yeah.
laugh, but the whole movie, she's got literally a couple of lines. But I kept thinking, like, man, I know that voice. I could not place it. Did you recognize who it was?
No, I
It was
didn't.
Mac's mom from Always Sunny,
Was it? Oh,
the
that's
chain
funny.
smoking old lady.
That's funny. I
Yeah,
love
and
that.
as soon as I looked it up, I was like, yep, just.
That's funny.
I love that character. Love Mac's mom.
Um.
Yeah. So go ahead.
Oh. No, what were you gonna say? Because I'm gonna go off on a tangent, but
Yeah,
I
go.
want to hear what
Go
you.
ahead.
Oh, okay. Okay. So two things. One, real quick, I do one of the things that I appreciated was that there was a lot of references to like classic Italian cinema. Right off the bat, in like the first opening seconds, there's a boat, and on the boat, the name of it, because boats have names written on the side, was the name Gelsomina, which is the name of the main character from Federico Fellini's La Strada,
Okay.
which is which you can also see a poster of La Strada multiple times in the town square. Also, Gelsomina is not a typical name, so I know that was a reference. There was also a moment where, where they had the makeshift Vespas and they were kind of going down the hills. There's a moment where Alberto like flipped open like a compass and had a picture of a guy in it. Do you remember that at all, or no?
Vaguely.
That was the actor Marcello Mastroianni,
Okay.
which is a very famous Italian actor. Also worked with a lot of Fellini. Worked with Fellini a lot. There was a moment when they're kind of running around on the rooftops, and there's a little old lady watching a movie in black and white. That movie was a big deal on Madonna Street, which is also another Italian film. They in the background they had a poster for Roman Holiday with Gregory Peck and Audrey Hepburn. They also had a poster for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So it's sort of a mixture of like, oh, there's sea creatures and stuff. So I appreciated all those little touches. What was I gonna say? Oh, about the subtext I was talking about. Like I said, I everything in this movie was done vague enough or broad enough that I think even the most conservative of religious parents or whatever could just happily show this to their kids and be content knowing that the message was just be yourself. It is kind of that broad theme of like, don't be afraid to be yourself. But I got some major subtext throughout all of it. A lot of gay coding as well. And to make it clear, I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I'm saying that as I it's just something that,
Observation.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like at first my wife and I were kind of joking like about the two kids, Alberto and Luca, kind of like, oh, they love each other. But their relationship did seem a little like very close. Like they always remain platonic throughout. So nothing is kind of hinted past that. But they're very close and touchy, um and Alberto gets very jealous when Luca's hanging out with the girl, Julia,
Yeah.
more. So there seemed to be like more about that, and at the very end, I mean, at the very end, like they essentially put one of the conceits of the film is that these sea monsters, they look like humans when they're on dry land, but if they get wet, then they appear as sea monsters again, very colorful sea monsters. And so at the end, it really is kind of like they're hiding their true selves to these people who will resent them and hate them and want to hurt them if they reveal who they really are to people. And at the end, of course, the positive message is reveal yourself, like show the world your true colors. So it felt very much like a metaphor about coming out, where you don't need to be afraid to show the world who you are. Don't hide yourself. Be your authentic self. Be your colorful self, and the world will accept you. Which is a really great message for a movie. It doesn't dive too deep into that theme. It's kind of surface level, but it's still a positive message to give people. And the thing that I was mentioning about where I felt like this had to be intentional was there are these two characters that I don't even think have dialogue, but there are these two old ladies that you see recurring throughout the movie. They're like eating gelato together. Luca calls him stupido at one point, and they like
Right.
smack shit out of him. But you see him throughout, and then at the end, after Luca and Alberto reveal themselves to be sea monsters, and then his family come in and they're sea monsters. Then these two ladies, like remove their umbrellas because it's raining, and they are sea monsters as well. And I just think that it's too coincidental that they're two old ladies together, like they're a couple, they're a pair. And again, they're not like, they don't kiss each other, they don't explicitly say they're a romantic couple, but it's just
but they're like always together. And
yeah, and with like I said, with a lot of the other posters that was kind of shown throughout the movie, it led me to believe that this was set in the 50s, which would still not be an accepting time period for people who are gay. And so it felt very gay coded to have two old ladies reveal their true colors as well. So I like that. It's a movie where, like you mentioned up top, it aims very young. It's very, very young even for a Pixar movie. And I think that, like, without having to explain what sex is or sexuality to a kid, this is something you can show to a child and give them that positive message of, like, it's okay to come out, whether or not it's specifically about your sexuality, or, like I said, it could be about anything. You're a nerd, don't be afraid to be a nerd, or whatever, you know what I mean? Just be yourself.
right.
And that's my 2 cents on the gay subtext in this movie.
No, and that, even before you messaged me about it, that came across pretty loud and clear to me. I didn't make the connection with the older ladies, but yeah, I mean, and at first I was kind of watching it because, just the way these two, Luca and Alberto, the way they interact, sort of not right when they first meet, but once they really become friends, like you said, it feels really, really close.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, like, okay, I think I'm reading a little bit too much into this, even though it was coming across pretty loud and clear to me. But then, as you said, towards the third act, when Luca is going and hanging out with Julia, like the level to which Alberto gets jealous is like that really felt like a jilted lover.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, the director kind of came out and poor choice of words, but the director sort of kind of put the kibosh on this. I have his quote here. The director's name is Enrico Casarosa, and he talked to Screen Rant, and he said, "We were quite aware that we wanted to talk about that time in life before boyfriends and girlfriends. So there's an innocence and a focus on the friendship side. I feel like the story would be a little different in that it's slightly more complicated when romance comes in." And whether or not we can take him at his word on that, I don't know anything about this man. I don't think I've seen anything else he's done. I mean, I can absolutely buy that, and I think it's certainly not explicit enough where one can say he's lying or that's wrong. Like it's open-ended enough that, as you said earlier, you can watch this movie, and if you don't get that, or you don't want to take that away from it, that's fine. You can take it purely on the surface. These two dudes are just becoming best friends and they want a Vespa. But I feel like, whether it's intentional or not, I feel like that subtext is very clearly there.
Yeah, which is strange to me because I haven't read a lot of reviews, but I just did kind of a cursory glance through Rotten Tomatoes, and I haven't really seen many critics mention it, which I thought was weird because I honestly didn't go into this looking for it. Like I wasn't prepared to be like, I wasn't trying to analyze it at that. It just came across pretty loudly to me. In fact, the moment where I really, because I was thinking it, but the moment that really kind of sold it to me, even before the end, was there's a moment in the beginning of the third act where Alberto's character, they have a kind of a fight, him and Luca, and Julia comes down, and Alberto's like, you know what? I'm going to show you. Look, I'm a sea monster. So he gets under the water and he shows that he's a sea monster, and everyone's like, oh my God. And Alberto's like, come on, Luca, we're both sea monsters. And Luca just is like, oh my God, a sea monster. Like he still hides himself. And I've seen that scene in a lot of other movies, specifically about gay relationships. Like I just saw it recently in I think it's Happiest Season with Kristen Stewart and
Okay.
Mackenzie Davis, where essentially they're a couple, but they have to hide because Mackenzie Davis's super conservative parents wouldn't accept it. So Kristen Stewart comes out like, "Hey, I'm dating your daughter," and Mackenzie Davis is like, "What? I'm not gay. Like, you're weird." And it was like the same beat, and I've seen it before. And like to me, I'm like, I don't know. It's like I said, I take the director's word in that it's not explicit enough that you can kind of wave it away, and they're like maybe young kids wouldn't pick up on it like consciously, but there's no way you can write it and direct it and animate it and not make that connection. You know
Right.
what I mean? I don't know.
Well, and I will say too, like just to talk about the ending. I mean, uh, they're doing this marathon, and the way that Alberto and Luca sort of become friends again. Like Luca is willing to reveal himself to save Alberto or something like that.
Yeah.
I did really like that moment.
Yeah.
I thought kind of all three of those friends really came together in a really lovely way in that moment.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, good movie. By no means anywhere, like you said, top tier of Pixar.
No.
I'd kind of put it on the lower scale. Granted, I have not seen the Cars movies, and my understanding
Mm.
is Cars 2 is like straight up like a bad movie.
Yeah. It is.
I've just kind of avoided that, but
Yeah, so it's not bad. It doesn't reach those levels, but it is kind of lower tier. It's I'm trying to think of another example because Pixar really hasn't made that many middle of the road movies.
no.
I'd say maybe like Monsters University, which is
Okay.
not a bad movie, but it's also just kind of like, well, it's not as good as the first.
Right.
Yeah, I think I'd put Luca around there. If this was like a premium access movie, like let's say Mulan was, or what was the last one they did? Cruella. I
Yeah.
would say wait, like it's not worth $30.
Right.
But it's free, so I would recommend it to people if you're interested. Like I said, beautiful animation. The pasta in this looked fucking rad. Like
Yeah.
that pasta dish that the one-armed dad made. I was like, this looks amazing. Like I know it's a cartoon, but I want that.
Right.
Oh, and last thing I'll probably say is I actually liked that. I like the dad character and the cat. The cat
The cat was funny, yeah.
I don't know why. It was the same gag, but it was just a cat with the mustache, like the dad. It was just growling, like, made me laugh every time. But yeah,
No, I really like the dad character because like
yeah,
when we meet him, he's this like very imposing character, but he ends up really kind of, particularly Alberto, taking Alberto sort of under his wing and teaching him how to fish and work with him and all that. Like,
yeah,
I really enjoyed that sort of character's arc.
totally. No, I like that too. I wish they kind of leaned into it more because I got what they were doing because Alberto talked about how his real dad, just kind of like abandoned him.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, cool. So this character, this one-armed dad character, I don't know what his name is. One-armed dad.
I think it was Massimo.
And so I was like, oh, cool. He's gonna kind of be like a surrogate father. And technically he was, but like, I don't know. Again, for a Pixar movie, they really didn't hit that emotional mark. I felt like for a Pixar film, they could have like really emphasized the loneliness and loss that Alberto had by not having this father. And there could have probably been like a really emotional gut punch moment of like accepting this new family of Massimo, accepting him into the family. But it didn't. It was just kind of like, okay, you hang out with me now. The end.
Yeah, it really felt like that. I hesitate to call it a subplot, but just the idea that his father's gone and sort of being taken under the wing of Massimo. Again, it felt almost just like lip service. Like, we're gonna mention it, we're gonna throw it out there, we're gonna move on.
Which is a shame because I like the idea of that, and I think that like I said, I think it could have lend itself to a pretty emotional moment, but it was just kind of there.
Yeah. So I'm with you. I mean, I think, if you have Disney Plus, it's not going to cost you anything extra. It's fun, it's cute, it looks great, it's fairly short. I think it's about an hour and 40 minutes, and I found it moved pretty quickly. So
for sure,
I'd say check it out, but like, don't go in expecting something like Wall-E or Wall-E's so good. So I guess we're gonna move on to our final topic of the day, which is just just fun.
major 180 turn from this child-friendly movie.
Right. So there is an animated show on where does the show air? Do you know off the top of your head?
It used to be when DC had that streaming service for a bit, right? I forget, DC All Access. I don't know what it was called.
I think it was just DC Universe, I think.
Yeah, I think that they're now switching it over because season 3 hasn't come out yet, but I think it's going to be premiering on HBO Max from now on.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And for those of you in Canada, that means probably Crave. So I've only watched a couple episodes of this show. I've enjoyed it. I have a couple of friends who they hate the idea of superheroes swearing, being vulgar. I'm kind of the mind that, like, it depends on the property. If that's what your show is, maybe don't show it to a 7-year-old, but if that's what your show is within the universe of that show, if that's what it is, I don't care. That's fine. I'm not offended by it. Yeah. You know, there's always Batman, the animated series, or even we've talked, before, the Christopher Nolan movies. Everyone talks about how dark and gritty they are, but there's like no blood. There's no swearing. Like, they're actually kind of light in their own way. But this Harley Quinn show is like, it's really vulgar. I remember in the pilot episode, at one point, Harley's talking to Batman and Gordon. She's saying to Gordon, like, this guy totally fucks bats, right? And I was just like, okay, so it's that kind of show. All right.
Yeah, this is what we're doing, I guess.
Let's go. Apparently it gets quite violent and whatever.
I do want to check it out more because I've only seen like bits and pieces, but I've liked what I've seen. Like there's this one gag that I thought it's really morbid, but it got me, where essentially there's like some goons that are kind of chasing Harley Quinn, and she's like in this lab with a lot of experimental weapons and such, and she grabs one and shoots a guy, and then like seemingly nothing happens. Like he gets hit by like a blast. He's like, oh, nothing happened. And they look at it and it says like it's a cancer gun. So he just gave him cancer, and that's fucked up. And that's like, and she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like it's that kind of level of dark, kind of morbid humor that's probably not for everybody, but I was like, that's pretty clever. So I do want to check it out. And especially since this controversy that we're going to talk about, I'm interested in seeing it probably from the beginning.
And I mean, I don't even know if controversy is the word. I mean, everyone's talking about it. We wanted to talk about it because we're both Batman fans, and frankly, I think it's hilarious. So I can't remember the name of the showrunner off the top of my head, but he was interviewed recently, and he made a point of saying, like, the people at DC, like, they let us do like pretty much whatever the fuck we want, which is cool. But the one thing they wanted to do in season 3 that DC was just like, nope, not happening. They wanted to show Batman going down on Catwoman. Now, the memes and the artwork that have hit the internet are absolutely delightful. I'm enjoying them very much.
Oh, absolutely.
There's the internet can be a very dark, horrible place in a lot of ways, but I love that it's given people just this wicked outlet for creativity, and I'm loving seeing all this stuff come out. It's great. What do you think about this?
I actually have a little bit. In legal terms, this is what you would call hearsay. Because I heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy. But there's someone that I know who actually knows people in Warner Animation, and they were talking about this, and they said that from essentially, it wasn't as big of a deal as kind of has been made out, as it's been made out to be in news outlets. Essentially, it was like, like a writer's room typically is. You pitch around a bunch of ideas. And so during a writer's room for season 3, early on, they were pitching a bunch of ideas. That was one of them. And it got like, the kibosh was put on it pretty early on. And there was never like, DC was never like, you cannot do this, or Warner Brother put like the boot down, like, this is too far. It was very much just kind of like, nah, let's just not do that. That being said, it now has been made a pretty big deal, and I think it's funny. I think that the the show already goes into some pretty adult territory. This to me doesn't seem like it's crossing any line that any other adult themed show like Family Guy or South Park or whatever has. Rick or Morty. Choose one or the other, not both. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't see an issue with it. The supposed reasoning of Warner Brothers not wanting to show Batman giving head. I don't understand that at all. Like,
well, and they were quoted as saying heroes don't do that. And I, for one, know a lot of women who would disagree very strenuously with that statement.
Absolutely. I think that's the exact opposite. I feel like only absolute villains don't do that.
Right?
I said to someone else that it was like, I guess Warner Brothers wants Batman to be in the same league as DJ Khaled and Ben Shapiro, as publicly refusing to go down on their partners.
Okay.
I don't know if anybody gets that references, but those are two real people who have essentially come out and said like, no, I don't do that. I'm like, okay, that's weird. It's a weird thing to flex about.
Mhm.
Yeah, dude, Batman fucks. I mean, that sounds douchey, but in the comics, he's betting women and stuff. He's a bit of a playboy. Bruce Wayne is, whether it's the Bruce Wayne persona that he's projecting, or even just real Bruce Wayne, real Batman, he's with a lot of people, and I don't understand why that's crossing the line. Like, okay, he can have sex with people, but going down on a lady, that's too far.
And to me, if you want to talk about crossing a line, I think this is to me anyway, as a fan, I think this is less of a thing than Batman hooking up with Batgirl in The Killing Joke, because she's like, he's kind of a father figure to her. She's also like his buddy's daughter. For those of you who don't know, Commissioner Gordon, Barbara Gordon is his daughter. That to me was creepier than this idea. And I mean, Catwoman's Catwoman. Like, they're getting down and they're getting freaky and whatever, because she's Catwoman. I'm kind of the mind that, like, listen, I understand that like Batman is your probably most profitable IP out of all of DC. I get that you don't want to like taint the character or whatever, but then like, why did you allow him to be on the show in the first place? Like, if you don't want to cross the line with that character, that's fine, but then don't have him on the show. It seems like a very arbitrary line in the sand to me. What do you think?
For sure. Yeah. It like I said, I'm not sure why that specifically is crossing the line. Like, I could think of other things, like if Batman's making like a 9/11 joke, it's like, yeah, maybe don't do that. That's probably in poor taste. But like, literally, like I said, they, in the comics and in other things, they haven't really quite shown him having sex, but shown him like before, before getting ready or afterwards, like in bed with a woman. That's fine. But whatever, they've shown his dick in comics. Like, there was a big controversy about that. Yeah, so we can see his bat dong, but we can't see him. I don't know. I agree. I think it's very arbitrary, and if he's already going to be in a show that has like worse, humor, potty humor, and cursing and stuff like that, it seems strange. It seems strange. Like, and also I think they made mountains out of molehills. Like, if that was in it, I really don't think people would be talking about it. I think that it would have just been like a gag in a show that's filled with other, over the top gags.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think it would have really stood out to fans. I think fans of the show would just be like, yeah, it's par for the course with the show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I mean, again, if you have a 7-year-old child, don't let them watch the show.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a really bad idea. But yeah, I don't know. Again, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think it would be actually, Batman is a role model for a lot of people, and I think it would be a good role. It would be good model to set to show that Batman takes care of his partner's needs. It's very important, kids. It's not all about you. You got to give. It's not all about taking. It's about giving. And
That's right.
And if Batman can't do it, then what hope do we have? I don't know. I think
it's true.
Did you see that Zack Snyder posted a thing about it?
No.
Okay, so a lot of people have been posting like canon. Essentially, they would share images from comic panels of Batman essentially getting it on with Catwoman. All of them saying canon because it's from actual comic books. But Zack Snyder, and I'll send it to you afterwards. And guys, you can look this up too. It's not that graphic, but it's essentially Zack Snyder just tweeted or whatever he does on his Zemo, whatever his weird little
Vero.
The thing that only him and the Snyder Bros go on, of Batman going literally eating out Catwoman, and he says canon. But people have tried to like reverse search that image, and they're like, this is not from anything. So like, did Zack Snyder just get this commissioned? It's just a weird little thing, not a big deal, but it's just like that's so on brand. It's like Zack Snyder's like, I gotta one up him. I'm the edgiest comic book provocateur, I guess.
Well, and I think also like I think Zack Snyder does like to troll his fans a little bit.
Yeah,
troll people in general, because like that trailer for the Snyder cut, where you hear Joker saying we live in a society, and that wasn't even in the movie, but actually I think I saw the image that you're talking about. I didn't know it came from Snyder, but
it's the Snyder.
Okay. Well, yeah. So again, is this topic of any kind of importance? No, but we thought it would be fun to talk about it. I sure enjoyed it myself. How about you?
It was fun. I like the discourse around it. Even though, again, I think it's mostly in fun. Like nobody's really taking it seriously. I know I said controversy. Nobody's really upset about this, but it's just kind of fun that it's like in this day and age, there's still taboos around like really common things. So it's a fun thing,
particularly on a show that pushes like every boundary.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just silliness. Well, everybody, that is the show for today. Before we sign off, we want to thank you very much for watching. As I said off the top, if you would, we'd love it if you consider dropping a like on this show. Of course, like I said, it helps build the channel. We appreciate it. Obviously, comment down below. Tell us what you thought of Luca. Tell us if you're enjoying Loki. Do you think DC should let Batman do his thing? Whatever your thoughts, jump down. Let us know what you think. I read all the comments, like I say. Chris, where can people follow you online?
You can follow me on Instagram. My handle is called Art of Light and Shadow. It's a daily movie blog where I post everything that I watch, as well as some underrated recommendations. And right now, I'm still doing a Best Director tournament. It was user submitted and now it's user voted. So kind of pitting the greatest directors of all time against each other to see who will remain victorious. It's a lot of fun. So check it out. Art of Light and Shadow.
And of course, like I said, Andris is not here this week, but if you want to check out his stuff, go on YouTube, do a search for Cheap Thrills, Unspeakable Terror. He reviews sort of horror movies and sci-fi and B movies from the dawn of cinema to the modern era. I really like his channel. His videos are short, sweet, they're fun. And like I say every week, kind of sounds like Rod Serling, and that's cool. Of course, you're already on my channel, but if you would click the subscribe button, I'd sure appreciate it. And of course, you can check me out on Instagram and Twitter, also at Courtshake. Once again, we want to thank you guys for watching. I want to remind you that you can get this podcast audio only on places like Google Podcasts and Spotify. And we just want to say that we hope you're all safe and healthy. It feels like the world is coming out of this thing, and it's really, really exciting. So that's great. Hope you guys are all safe and healthy, and we will see you next week.
See you, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.